I think we're live. And just out of curiosity, um, did you guys see the changing thumbnails? Because we took the picture a bunch of times.
Is
Um,
that a thing? Can they see that? That's
I don't
embarrassing.
know.
It's my fault.
Well, anyways,
No.
we took the thumbnail a bunch of times because Jenny kept moving at the last second.
It's because I just showered, so my hair's like not helpful. So that's why. Sorry.
Well,
Are we even talking to anyone? I feel like we're here alone.
I think so, but this is very optional. So we understand that a lot of people are still kind of not feeling as confident about being out there publicly. So, um, yeah, I just hope that everybody can hear us and that everybody's doing okay.
Me too, for sure.
Do you have any opening thoughts?
Mm.
Anything you'd like to start off with?
No, you can start off with anything you want to start off with.
Well, I was thinking about kind of like what could I possibly say to just anybody in general,
Mm-hmm.
and the first thing that comes to mind is that um, everybody is going to be feeling very differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that some feelings are shared amongst the people who are no longer in the church, and some feelings are shared amongst the people who are still in the church.
Right.
But even within those groups, like there's going to be people who feel very different about just the whole situation. And I wanted to say that however you want to cope with whatever you're feeling is perfectly fine, um, and it's good because that's what's going to help you, and so it's good for you, right? It might not help people like us, like we've been talking about this. It might help you to kind of get away from all of this and not hear anyone from any side of this and just kind of take a break from it all.
Right.
And that's good. And we understand because this is a lot to go through. I think that for us, the reason we can't kind of just
Do that.
do that is because for such a long time, like we were so invested with so many people in so many different ways as
Yeah.
missionaries and as just kind of like um, part of the, like in a very small part as missionaries, like part of the leadership. So it was so that kind of got us really invested in different ways.
I think it's like that for a lot of people, though. I think that, like, for a lot of people, this was their whole lives, whether or not they were missionaries. Um,
Yeah.
And fun fact, like, I just kind of had to stop there because, um, hi, hi everyone. I just kind of had to stop there because,
From SATX.
fun fact, we were actually promoted the week that we got out. So
Yeah.
we got the call of our promotion, which we were waiting for our whole lives, and it's like all we wanted. So I think that everyone had a different level of just investment in this church. Um, so for everyone's going to process things differently, but just like I think that some were more invested than others, we can all relate with the fact that when you're a part of this church is kind of like your whole life. You're told that this church is going to be your salvation. So everything that's going on is going to be so hard. It's so heavy. So it is really important, like Misael was saying, however you need to process this, make sure that you're doing that for yourself, whether it's posting or whether it's staying off social media. Whatever you need to take care of yourself. It's funny because I was talking to someone today, um, and for me, something that really drains me more than anything else is seeing people I love still in church. After everything that's happened and everything that's come out, seeing people whom I love and respect still in church is something that really gets to me because I know that there's just nothing that I can say to change their mind, and I need to respect that. But at the same time, I do feel this responsibility to talk about what I know just like I felt this responsibility when I was, in church, and I wanted to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, I feel this responsibility now to help people know that the church or the man that they're serving with all of their sincerity and their hearts, it's not actually the church that leads to God. It's not actually the man who is going to take them to God. And I know that sounds so harsh, but I just want to speak frankly now, because it's not, there's just no need to fluff it. I think I'm being respectful. I'm just stating the facts. As you see, it makes me nervous to think that some people still within the church might think that I'm trying to diss them or that I'm trying to disrespect them. But as we addressed in the last video, speaking up is not the same thing as disrespecting. Can everybody hear us still?
Hi, Joshua, and welcome back, Priscilla, and hello. And I figured it out, SATX, San Antonio, Texas. It just kind of hit me.
But it's so important that whether or not you feel this responsibility to talk to other people, or you feel this like sadness or frustration, whatever you feel, it's so important that before you go out and talk to people, you take care of yourself, because you can't serve from a broken cup. And right now, most of us, if not all, we're a little bit broken. We've been hurt. We've discovered that we were lied to. We've heard the Jane Doe's testimonies, and that'll hurt anybody. So I think that it's so important to just take a breather and understand that you have to heal yourself first, and maybe not completely before you start talking, maybe not completely before you start acting, but at least start that process before you move on.
Yeah, take it at your pace, definitely, and in your own way. And any way you find fit is good and is right, and it's just your way.
Absolutely.
Hey, Diana and Jasmine.
And yes, Joshua, we are strong, and I think we're stronger together. So that's why we kind of wanted to come on here too, because I think LLDM wants us to believe that there's not a lot of us, but actually, I think that there's just a lot who are still in hiding. But there is a lot of us. I don't believe that there's 5 million people who are still in the church. So there's definitely a lot of us, hi Jenny. So with that, take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're taking time to process this and to start the healing process. And then good things are going to come from that. It sounds like nothing, but really it's everything.
With that said, how have you mentioned that people that are in the church are very loud.
Yeah,
and I think that's
right?
very true. They're very loud. It tends to be like that in most areas of life. Usually you hear from, they call them like loud minorities, like just because you hear and not minorities,
No, sure.
racially speaking, just minorities as in not the popular opinion, but like some of the fringe opinions are what you tend to hear the most of,
right,
when the bass is loud. And I think that's a very strong point to make about what's happening now, where first of all, you don't hear as much from people who are getting out, or who are doubting, or who feel unsure and just in shock with everything that's happened. But you hear a lot from very aggressive posters, people who post is what I mean. How do you feel about that loudness? Or because just personally, it gets to me sometimes. I think it's
how does it get to you? Like, does it make you sad or angry, frustrated? Frustrated
first.
Yeah.
And then
not
just frustrated, but it makes it seem like it's trying to get me to rethink my position.
Oh, I see.
so it feels, I would also use the word like intimidating, right? Because not only are they loud, but they're loud and then they cut you off, before you can
Rebuttal,
rebuttal, or not even just respond to them, but just kind of process what it is.
which is happened.
It's kind of like you're wrong, and you gotta follow me back if you want to tell me anything about that.
Right.
So, and I think that many of us, that like you said earlier, that was our friend group, that was our community. So
Yes.
we're surrounded by them,
Survival.
even though we didn't intend to be.
Yes.
It was just kind of all we
We were
had.
kind of raised into it, born into it. Well,
It is draining.
how
Perfect
do
word.
how do I feel? I feel so I guess I'll just speak from my experiences so far. I've had a few people write to me very respectfully. I just shared one of those with you right before we got on here. And it really broke my heart because it was a young girl who I knew. So I'll just talk to you guys while he's.
No, I'm listening.
So it's from this young girl that I knew, and she wrote to me and she said that out of respect, she wanted to know if the church did so much for me and I was so faithful, why was I doing this to the church? And now speaking out or against. Things like that really drain me. Things like that, I think they just hurt me very deeply because I know that I won't be able to sway her. And not that that's my point, but nothing I say will make sense to her. And I grew up here, and this was my life, so it's really hurtful. I just feel so defeated, and it drains me. So, but at the same time, I did have a very productive talk, I think, with another person who also wrote me, again, very respectfully. And I was able to just kind of go back and forth with him a little bit. And that made me feel hopeful. Just because I know everybody's different and I know everybody who's in there is going to respond differently. But it just reminded me that it's not our job to convince anybody. It's not our job to take anybody out of that place. Our job is to ourselves, and for our families. So if you're already out, if you are already starting the healing process, if you've done your job, you've done your responsibility. If you want to take on more responsibility, or if you feel the calling or the necessity to help other people who are still in there, I think it's really important to remember that your commitment and your job should be, your commitment should be to yourself first. And I think that that's just so helpful and encouraging, because I've done my job. Everything else is extra. So talking to this person, he said that he was going to think about it, and he even thanked me. So I know he probably won't get out, because when you're just like surrounded by, church members, churchgoers, like we said, they're very loud and that's all they're hearing. So he probably won't get out, but I know that the seed is there, and I think that's our job. I think our job is to ourselves, and then just to say what we need to say and let it go. And I know that's very hard. I'm not just speaking, that's not easy for me to say. My mom is still in LLDM, so it's not easy for me to say, but I think it's really important that we all remember that, because I think that a lot of us are becoming more drained and becoming more hurt and sad and discouraged and frustrated, because we just know that there's nothing we can do for them. But again, it's not our job. Our job is to ourselves, and then out of love, we can just like encourage. I feel like you want to say something.
No, adding to what you said, I think it's not that we can't do anything. It's that the progress we're going to see is not going to be immediate.
That's true. Or
right?
Linear.
Right. And it might kind of ebb and flow a little bit.
Sure.
Because like you said, if they're surrounded by people in the church. And as we said last time, the church is very much about its image, and so everybody within the church is always um, asked to have an image that is facing the world. And so it takes time to break through that a little bit. And so that's what I mean, that the progress won't be like, you won't talk to somebody and say the magical thing and then they'll respond with, I see your point. Let's do this together. It'll be more like you will say a few things, they will take those in, process them, and then be reaffirmed by their church circle, and then kind of doubt again, and then it's a progress.
Yeah.
It's a process. I'm sorry, but I think it's important to remember that we should. I don't think anybody should feel discouraged. I think everybody should feel like through small conversations and through actions, in the long run, then they will see that the fear that they've been instilled with about everybody who leaves ends up drunk and
Sure.
full of vices and their life falls apart. Like, no, that's not true.
That's not accurate.
That's just the fear that is meant to keep the members in the church.
Right, and that's on us a little bit too, may I say, like, because most of us who get out are either quiet or do act out of anger, and we can't like project that image, and not that like is the only thing that matters, but I think that it's important to note that it's something that can contribute to their narrative. So if we do want to their narrative about us going crazy and all of this stuff, so if we do want to help anybody, I think that's a good place to start. Like I said, work on yourself, and like your I don't want to say testimony, but just like your life will reflect and will show that it's not true. Like, we get out and we don't go crazy.
So John II says, how's your relationship with family members still in church? I'll let you speak to that first. And the reason I'll let you, because you just mentioned your mom, and I was very fortunate to be able to speak to first my parents. After I got out, I spoke to my parents, and then about 5 months later they got out, and then I spoke to my brother, who I'll let him I don't know, am I like exposing him? It might be
No, that's okay. But when they were still in, anybody who was still in, you were very respectful.
Yeah.
But he was way more. I don't know. He was very blunt.
So I had like as a missionary, right? I had the responsibility of preparing sermons for Sundays and go out preaching. So when I went to talk to my parents, like, I was pretty prepared with like Bible verses and all of that. So even as prepared as I was, it wasn't like I left because they lived somewhere else. I left and they were like, all right, we're following you. It was a process where I spoke to them. I knew I had like, I know my mom and I know my dad. And so I had approached them the way that I knew would make them think, right?
Right.
And so they kind of sat on it for a long time, and then slowly they started to see the court stuff themselves. And then one day my mom called me and we kind of bonded over her experience of denial and then acceptance and then just grief, because she had given, she understood that she had given so much and she just felt so betrayed.
Right.
So, it's not an easy process. Anyways, the question was, how's your relationship with your family members that are still in?
And before I answer that question, I would like to add that I think you were so good about going to your mom, and the way that you spoke to them wasn't saying like, I have all the answers. I'm out and I have all the answers, because I think that one of the things that LLTM people are so afraid of is, if I get out of here, where will I go next?
Mhm.
Because they're just so used to hearing over and over again, this is the only church. There's no salvation apart from this church. So
Well,
it's
and there is only one church.
right. And
That's the idea
right,
behind that. There
right,
is only one church, and if it's not this one, then which one is it?
right.
Is the follow-up question.
Yeah. And they're really good at asking that almost immediately. So I feel like you were really good at just framing it for your mom and saying, Mom, I actually don't have all the answers, but what I do know is that this is wrong and I can't stay here.
Yeah.
And
That was like, I had bullet points, but that was like one that I was like, I have to say this one like this, because I think it was like, I thought it would be the most impactful to say to my mom, who loves being right, and so I said, I don't know which one is the right one, but I know that this one is not it. So,
yes,
anyways,
yes.
how do you feel?
And I just admire you for the way that you did approach them. Honestly, guys, I kind of messed up, I feel, with my family. I am so
Driven.
I'm so good at speaking to everybody else and just being like, um, I can go as slowly as you want, and we can stop anytime you want. That's if anybody wants to take that, I think that that's really respectful and helpful. But when it comes to my family, I just love them so much, and it hurts me that I know that they have such a good heart and they're trying to serve God as best as they can, and they're being lied to. And so I kind of, when I first spoke to my mom and I first told her I was out, she felt so sad, and I felt so guilty for making my mom sad. I was always a good child. I was in choir since I was 13. When I was 13 years old, I joined choir. When I was still 13, I think I started going and like preaching just around our neighborhoods. I'm always like a go-getter, so I was always just trying to preach the gospel. I married this guy when I was 18 because he wanted to go to the labor, and I did too. So that was like a big push for me. And yeah, and I've always been, you know, the good child, or someone my mom could trust. Always read the Bible. But then it just pained me so much to feel like I was now not that anymore. And it's like an identity displacement crisis thing, that it's just like, whoa, out of nowhere, I'm no longer this to my family. So that hurt me a lot, and just wanted to like tell my mom, like with all of the love in my heart, like, Mom, you have a good heart. I know that if you knew this was wrong, you wouldn't stand by it, and it's wrong. But she's very indoctrinated, and she's very sincere. So she really does believe in this man. So anyway, after we spoke, and I kind of blew it, and I was kind of like rash when I spoke to her and very blunt, we both decided that we were going to wait until the case was over. But then again, yesterday, instead of just waiting for things to settle a little bit, I called her, and I was full of emotion, as I'm sure many of us are. And I think that there's just no need to hurt them. But at the same time, I have a hard time finding balance when I'm speaking to her, because it's not that I want to hurt her, it's that I want to help her, and it's that I also love the Jane Does so much for what they did, and I can't conceive that someone I love so much is being led to supporting a man who hurt them so much. So, how is my relationship with my family who's still in? Most of it is respectful. When it comes to my mom, um, it was really steady and respectful for a while there. And then I think yesterday I just kind of, what do you think?
I think it just became a little more tense, but I think it's still very respectful and I think it's still very loving. It's just, I think, see, and actually this was in my notes. The church adds pressure to your life, like from all angles. It just adds so much pressure to your life, and so I think that that pressure kind of just um, makes a, a good situation like stick in your mind, but it also makes a bad situation worse, right? And I think that that's what this is like. Um, our relationship with our parents tends to always be kind of like, especially when we're younger and our parents kind of are also younger, like it tends to be very um, just exaggerated. Like every emotion is a little bit more exaggerated. And so I think that the church also creates a version of that where you guys would have had an argument. I've had arguments with my mom from time to time, but when you put the church into it, that argument becomes life or death every time. And so I think that the conversation you had yesterday, and I even talked to your mom a little bit, and I think it's just a little tense right now, but I don't think it's anything that's long lasting because like there's a bond there that is definitely stronger than a bond with a church leader. And as optimistic as that might sound, I think that that bond allows us to be a little bit more aggressive towards our immediate family. But it also is the bond that helps us get through to them when you might think it's impossible. Anyways, I don't think it's irreversible in any way. I think it's just she needs a little bit of time and you also needed a little bit more time.
And I'm not worried about it being.
So Adeli wrote directly to you, if you can read that.
Oh, would you read it? Since
it says, "Girl, I feel you. I'm sorry, Adeli, if this isn't the way you wrote it. I left around 2016. I wish I had more guidance back then and had the grace to navigate the way I left the church." And yeah, it's that youth, you have more vigor, you have like more of a sense of urgency when you're young, for as ironic as that is. But
sure, or when you're very emotional, obviously. But thank you.
Sorry, were you gonna say something
No,
else?
I was just gonna say we're all in this together.
Definitely.
And I'm not afraid that there's like been like a broken, I don't know, relationship with my mom. I just I really feel deeply saddened when I think that I hurt her or offended her, and it's something that's very hard to navigate because I'm also not I'm not willing to um,
Compromise.
no, I'm just not willing to stand by and watch after the Jane Does did so much, and risked so much to expose this, so it wouldn't keep happening to children. I'm not willing to just coward and not speak my mind. I just want to find the most respectful way to do that. So I want to make that clear.
I always take, because somebody also says, Anne wrote, "The church preaches to them not to have communication with ex-LDM. They say we are apostates. Therefore, they prefer to believe a man they don't know personally than to believe their own family." I think there's a lot of truth to that. But what I was talking about earlier was a little bit more on the side of, like, for example, if I said to her mom what she said to her mom, it's very possible that her mom will never speak to me again, right? Because like it carries a different weight when it comes from somebody else. And so that's what I was referring to. Like, And it's the same. Like if she said the things that I've said to my mom, if she said them to her, like my mom would probably like
Sure
not
not.
take them the same way, or choose to not talk to her again. And that's more what I meant. Like when you have that bond, at least you have a reason to go back, and they have a reason to accept you back. And so I I think that this whole situation is worth like stretching that bond out to its limits a little bit more, because like you said, it's not just about like you have to do what I want you to do. It's more about what you're doing is putting others at risk, and
Yeah.
you as a human don't have the right to endanger the lives and the well-being of others by supporting an organization that would hide the wrongdoings done to children, whatever extent you want to take that to. Like even if it's not as terrible as we've heard that it's been, you have no right to impose your harm on somebody else's lives, much less your children. And so I think that this is something worth straining the relationship for just a little bit.
I have heard people also say from LDM, they have said that it's that we should just let them be in there, that we should just let them continue in their happiness, that they're really happy and they feel free in there, which I think that once you get out and your eyes are open, you really see that it wasn't it wasn't all we were taught that it was. We are literally taught that happiness is there. We are literally taught that there's no other place that we can feel at peace. But once you're out and you open your eyes, you see that that's not really true. Yeah, but I think that it's just very important also to note that some of these people will say, I'm happy here and nothing happened to me and nothing happened to any of my loved ones, right? But I was talking about it with my mom and I said, well, that's very selfish. That's something that's very selfish to say. Imagine when the Jews were being taken. Imagine how many people who were not affected because they weren't Jew just did.
So you're talking about the Holocaust.
The Holocaust, yeah, sorry. But imagine how many people sadly just stood by and let this happen because it wasn't happening to them.
Do you remember that quote that we were? It's a poem. There's a poem, and I've seen it come out in a lot of different places, but like referring precisely to that, it's a poem by a pastor from Germany at the time, and it's something like, when they came for the socialist, I said nothing because I was not a socialist, and when they came for the work unionists, I said nothing because I was not a work unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I said nothing because I was not a Jew. And then when they came for me, there was nobody to speak up for me. And I think that that's such a powerful way of saying, just because it's not affecting you now doesn't mean it's never going to affect you.
Yes, and I would also argue, and if you are a true follower of Jesus, it doesn't matter if it's not affecting you now. It matters that it's affecting someone. And if you really have God's love in your heart, then you care about that, and it affects you. You grieve with those who are grieving. So I just wanted to point that out. That's the wrong narrative. That's the wrong paradigm, saying, oh, because I'm not affected, I am okay staying here. Well, I mean, you have the choice to, but that doesn't make it okay. So I know that there's more questions.
Hello, anybody who's joined us.
Hi.
Yvette, Red 7, Chaz, anybody we've missed, thank you so much for joining us. I did want to address something that Cesar Hernandez wrote. He writes, is your point of view on who is Jesus Christ? Cults believe Unitarian, so essentially not the Trinity, right? And the Christians I have talked to believe in the Trinity. I want to follow Jesus Christ of the Bible. That's a great question, and I see Genesis already answered it.
Yeah.
And I'm a very I look at context a lot. So I noticed that you said cults believe Unitarian. So I think that kind of tells us that you and Genesis both believe similar, something more similar to the Trinity, right? I would like to say just real quick that if you want to follow the Jesus Christ in the Bible, I believe it is irrelevant how you conceptualize him. But personally, I actually believe that it's close, that if you want to kind of define Jesus Christ, that the Bible is more in favor of a non-Trinitarian Jesus Christ. The reason I say that is because although, as Genesis pointed out, that Trinitarian concept is implied many times, I find that Jesus expresses a not the Trinitarian. So I think that it is that he is not Trinitarian. But like I said, if you want to follow him, my ultimate belief is that the concept itself is more irrelevant than the teachings.
I think the technicality is more irrelevant. I think the concept is accessible. You can read it and make your own.
Sorry, Genesis.
Your own decision on that.
You didn't say Trinitarian. I read his I am statements. Didn't mean
it's
to.
It's probably because I've talked to you before and I've talked to you about our conversations. But definitely, I would say I would agree with you that that if you want to follow Jesus, first thing that you should worry about is having a relationship with Jesus and getting to know who he was. And I really do believe that if you pray and you trust the Holy Spirit and you keep reading, you will arrive at the answer that you need to, if that makes sense. Because I don't believe, I know there's just different preaching on this, but I don't believe that if you die and you tell God, and I don't believe that God is going to tell you, you know what, because you didn't believe that I was three persons in one, you're condemned. I think that God is so graceful, and that God is, I think that just God, we need to get to know God. We need to get to know God from the Bible, and not the scary God that is just all about technicalities.
Yeah, so the LLDM God is actually very vengeful and very, he holds a lot of grudges. If you go based off of the LLDM doctrine, that is not the God of the Bible. I think that when they describe Jesus, they do a better job, but definitely there is a misconception in the way they preach God himself, because that God that is preached in the church is very, like you said, he is very technicality sensitive. Right. And so I think that as you move forward, and this kind of address, I wanted to kind of move into this question from Chaz. Can you now find happiness in another church? Where do we go?
Okay.
So I think that if you approach it that way, as in, you know what, in LLDM, even though I was there for such a long time, I didn't really get to know God.
Yeah.
You actually will find a lot of happiness in a lot of different churches. Right. Because a lot of other churches, because they don't have the election, they actually preach a lot of God and Jesus.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how much you don't know about their character. A lot of what I learned about God and Jesus, I learned by reading the Bible, not from being in church. Right. Because what kind of God? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say what kind of God. The God that LLDM preaches will hold on to something bad you did for a very long time.
Yeah.
Carry it on into your children. And you might say, well, the Bible says that in certain areas. Yeah, but a lot of that was before the forgiveness and grace brought on by Jesus Christ, so that we didn't have to live with that same idea of God. So um, you don't have, like, I can't tell you where to go, but I can tell you that if you go to different places with an open mind, and try not to just bring it all back to what you think you already know, um, you're actually going to find a lot of peace and a lot of encouragement, which I think is super helpful when you're trying to find happiness, because happiness is not just like it's not, I feel happy. It's usually something you look back on and you said, that was very good. So it tends to be a process that you then can um, reflect on, and see that, it's why people say, like, you know what, I had a rough childhood, but I actually consider my childhood pretty happy, because even though I went through a lot of difficulties, or we were poor, or my mom was very strict, um, it was actually pretty good. I felt pretty good, so it's the same thing with, now that you're an adult, you might face like day-to-day trials, but that won't determine your happiness. And then I think Red Seven writes, in regards to this, in other churches, in contrast to LLDM, I suspect they will actually encourage you to do good unto all kinds of others, including not from the church. Yes.
Yeah, so I want to
Very
say
true.
something on that too. I think that the spirit of discernment is very important. So you want to go first. I just would like to say this. If you believe in God and you got out of LDM, answering your question, where do we go? You go to God. I would say go to the Bible first. Like we were talking about, it's the true character of God is not depicted in LDM doctrine. So, I could just go on and on about that on its own. So, I would like to mention this, you guys. Um, with all due respect, LLDM knows how to indoctrinate and they know what they're doing, because they'll tell you to read the Bible, and I'm pretty sure you guys have heard this too. They would even say, read the Bible for 2 hours every day. But then they would tell you the Bible's not that important. Actually, what is very important is servant of God's word, because His word is living, but the Bible is just a testimony, right? So you are supposed to be at church before work. You are already very tired, and they read the Bible to you. So that's one. And then also, reading the Bible is not that important, because what's important is being there when there are transmissions, is having the letters read to you, because His word is living, and that's what's really going to help us. So there's not, even though they technically say read the Bible, we know that they don't mean it. They're just covering their bases by saying that. But actually, they are encouraging you to not read the Bible and to listen more to what Nason has to say, or whatever apostle there is. So first, I would like to just say that, have us all understand that, and then kind of get that out of the way, and say that God is very merciful. God is very personable. So God actually wants to join you on your journey, and you can actually find God wherever you are. And the reason I say it that way is, when we were in the light of the world, they would tell us that that God would only speak and reveal things to His holy apostle, and maybe one or two prophets, but we didn't really hear about those brothers. He would only reveal things to His apostle. So, actually, God does reveal things to you. Actually, God does want to help you, and actually, God does want to have a personal relationship with you. I know that those are terms that, if you just got out of LLDM, or if you got out and you haven't heard anything else, can sound funny or weird, but there are a few podcasts that I have that can help you with that. And I would encourage you to not go to a rebound church. I would encourage you not to start that yet, because you can go to God and you can have a safe place with Him. Build your relationship with Him a little bit, and then use the spirit of discernment. And if you want to, you can find another church. And I want to say the spirit of discernment is so important, because it doesn't only teach us to distinguish us, like what's wrong. So it's not a critical spirit. It's not a spirit that is just going to criticize and just see the wrong in like churches and in people, but it's actually a spirit that's going to show you what's good, that's going to help you understand and pursue that is actually good. And then I have more to add. I don't know if I should, though, because I want to let you talk.
No, yeah, go ahead.
But I just find this so helpful, you guys, because I also want to say LLDM also had us living in so much fear, and a way that they did this was telling us that secondary, I don't know how to say this. So the way that I have learned to understand this is that when it comes to God, there's actually 4 tiers of levels of importance of subjects within the Bible, what to do or how to do subjects within the Bible. And the first tier is the most important, and that is that you believe in the gospel, that you believe the good news that Jesus came and that He gave His life for us. That's the foundational, most important thing. That is what is going to help you be saved. And guys, it's so much easier. God made salvation so much accessible than LLDM wanted us to think. So if you are scared that you might be doomed, or if you are scared that you left the light of the world, and I know it's very scary, but I just want to tell you can breathe. Like, you can take a deep breath, because God is actually so good. He made salvation so much more accessible than we originally thought. So what LLDM did was bring other,
Like
tier issues.
It makes the details the most important
Right.
thing.
It brought like tier, like secondary tier issues, and made them the most important thing, right? They told us that was actually the foundation, which without doing that, we couldn't obtain salvation. And I'll just give an example. Wearing skirts. By the way, the Bible doesn't say that women have to wear skirts, but wearing skirts. So at church, you would be reprimanded if you were a sister and you weren't wearing skirts. But that is not that is more up to your conscience, because what the Bible talks about is modesty, not wearing actual skirts. It talks about modesty. And actually, you guys, most of the verses that we were given, it was speaking about modesty in regards to not showing off your wealth, because there were so many people in the Church of God who were poor. And then I believe it's the Greeks that when they were joining the church, they had all these pearls in their hair, they had braided hair, and with all these adornments, and that would like make somebody poor feel bad. So modesty, it's up to me to navigate that, to walk with God in a personal relationship, and and work in my heart and try to figure that out. It's not just about wearing skirts. In fact, there are skirts that looked very unmodest. So that's what LLDM did, and it's scary. It's scary to think that if we don't have the checklist that we have to check off, we won't see heaven, right? Because that's what LLDM did as well. They gave us a checklist. Can you help me with like the items on the checklist? There was wearing skirts.
Be in church every day.
Be in church every day, that's right. Helping the ventas.
Yeah, do the sales.
What else? You guys can comment.
Like your tithing, your offerings,
That's
like
right.
that's all required.
That was all the requirements that they gave us. Um, but those are actually not foundational
Yeah,
issues.
no
No
dances, no movie
dances,
theaters,
yeah, no
no.
drinking.
And then there's like also like they say like, oh, you are free to enjoy the things of this world, but there's prayer every single day, and then it's like,
And you can't miss Sundays, especially.
yeah, you can't miss Sundays. And then like
That's what we were
it was
told.
like Sunday school service, Tuesdays and Fridays we had choir studies, Thursdays we had the service, Saturdays there was the kids service, and then like Mondays we went to preach. So like, all right, enjoy the world, but
And I would like to say
but no
something.
time for it.
Evelyn said,
Three 3 months of courtship before marriage. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very difficult one, in for many reasons. And then like no makeup.
Yeah.
All right.
Makeup either.
The veils, the pray on your knees, right? Like,
So they
it's
were
so many.
so they kind of told us that was a checklist, that if we weren't checking off most of those boxes, and God came and he surprised us, Jesus came like a ladrón en la noche, and he surprised us, that we were doomed, right? If something happened to our children and we weren't checking all of those items off our list, that our children were doomed. But that's how they keep us there with fear. But actually, like I said, God is much more personal, and those are all meant to be secondary or tertiary issues. They all fall on different issues, but they're not the primary and fundamental one.
And I wanted to say that, like, I know Red 7 commented about like the purpose of other churches, and I agree that one of the main reasons to be in a church is because you want a sense of community with like-minded individuals, right? That's the main reason, because the foundation of Christianity, from as I understand it, is to love one another as you love yourself, right? To love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the only way you can love your neighbor is if you have neighbors. So, but usually if you go out into the street and you try to show someone the love of Christ, they're going to think you're a little off. But if you have a community of like-minded individuals, it's easier for them to give you a call and you manifest your love of Christ and help them in their moment of need,
right.
But you can't have that sense of community if you have no community. Right. For us, we love God and we've felt the love of God. And the way we show the love of God is by extending ourselves to people who will have a like mind as ours, and we can sit and talk about these things with you. Yeah. And so though we don't have like a church community, we still practice our Christian ideals with those who we can and who are willing to accept the way we're trying to practice them. So like Red 7 writes, if I understand, it sounds like one should try to find a church to have someone to keep us accountable and for support and community, and not so much for the indoctrination.
100%, absolutely. Yes. And that's why I said, I think that the best thing that we could do is build that relationship with God and get to know God ourselves, so we can have that spirit, so we can just have that foundation and be able to discern what church is best for us, if that makes sense. But I also wanted to say that's kind of what's worked for me personally. And everybody can be different, and maybe you would benefit of finding a church and finding a community that will help you through your time of need. So definitely do what's right for you, and you can always, guys, if we got out of this one, you can always say no, and then just like
yes.
get out of any other church. Or like most churches isn't. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Most churches, it's not like you're in and you're out. It's actually, you visited us and now you're not visiting us. So
yes. Young Caddis writes, just do what your heart tells you, the end. If you're in a position where you can trust your heart, I would say go for it.
Yes, that's another thing with the checklist. And the biggest way that they keep the fear in us is that they don't teach us to trust ourselves. They teach us to trust
the authority.
the authority, whoever that is, which is your pastor, and then of course their apostle.
This is where we get our fear, God's grudgeful, jealous, from Patricia Galvan, and it's hard to let go. Very difficult to reframe who God is. That's very difficult, and that's why I said if you're in a position where you feel you can trust your heart, because sometimes your heart. I'm sorry to bring like biblical.
No, do it. Just say it.
Jesus was the one who said, where do homicides and evil come from? From the heart. So sometimes you do have to fight past your heart's urges, heart's desires, the lust, that grows within man. But that doesn't mean that it becomes something that you should not rely on. No, you should definitely rely on your heart. But I learned to identify where it's pulling you towards. So
to discern, and that does not mean that if you don't trust your heart, you're at risk of committing any of these or anything like that. Please let us know if we should be more explicit with what we're saying, because I just don't want us to give off the wrong impression. But yes, so I also want to address something and just be completely honest with you guys. Whoa, sorry.
Somebody knocked on the door.
It's like 3 little girls and all at the same time. So yeah, look up.
And then that gives me a chance to get caught up on the comments. I'll save any that are for her. I remember them saying, Adali, I remember them saying that we had to wear skirts because we can't dress like men do. Yeah, that was a big thing, but it's very, that one doesn't make that much sense, because who decides that, right? Robes in the time of Jesus, skirts in some countries, like that can't be all there is to it. LLDM manipulated the Bible verses to their convenience. I did see that throughout my 30 years in church from N. Yeah, we did too. And there were so many things that we just had to learn to kind of keep quiet about. I don't know if anybody saw that show, Under the Banner of Heaven, but they have an expression for the way you're supposed to just kind of keep those things to yourself. And they were calling it putting your questions on the shelf or something, shelving.
Yeah, shelving your questions.
Your questions, yeah.
That's exactly what
that does happen a lot in LLDM as well. Young Caddis, will I do what I want when I want? More power to you. Thanks for joining, though.
I wanted to say, you guys, as far as I'm concerned, you guys are our community. That's why we wanted to do this, because we're all in this together. We're all processing things differently. We all feel differently, but we've all been hurt the same way, and we all, I think, want justice, and I think that's something that unites us. So we're all in this together. It wasn't linear for me either. I want to say that. It's not like I got out and I was like, oh, let me find God, and and that was it. No, it was so painful. It was so confusing. I had to do it on my own, but I'm just speaking about what helped me the most. But I certainly also went through a phase in which I was like, well, maybe I won't believe in God, because there is a lot that kind of, I definitely understand why some people don't believe in God. And I think it's so cool, you guys, that there is no room for judgment, absolutely no room for judgment anymore. In fact, I feel like I can relate to and understand so much more now. And I just love that, because I think that it creates a connection with all different kinds of people who I love and I want to have in my life. So it wasn't linear, and whatever you believe in, that's awesome. More power to you.
DJ asks, not sure if you guys have already addressed this, but did you guys come to the conclusion of exiting LLDM at the same time? We kind of
We haven't addressed it.
lightly touched on it, but it was very interesting when we left very clearly. It was because during the pandemic, we kind of stopped gathering because it was like on TV, right? And so we kind of found out the things we found out, and we both decided to take a step back, and we were not going to continue, but we didn't really have a reason to tell anybody. I think that she was definitively out before I was, like, but just within a week,
Right. Oh,
within a
yeah.
couple of days.
So I guess the answer would be no, but it was just within a couple of days.
Yeah. And
that it was that he was out as well.
And it was more because of like, okay, so I mentioned this before. I used to translate some of the apostles' letters. I translated many of Ortodoxia's. I still have, like, in my Google Drive, like I still have a lot of translations that I did for them. Ortodoxia's monthly topics that they would send out, I translated quite a few of those. And I was also in the Ministerio de Ortodoxia, like a English division. And then I was also asked to speak during the pandemic. You know how they were doing those like recordings? So I was asked to speak in English for a Sunday school service.
And I was supposed to take
She was supposed to speak for a 9 a.m. service.
And we had just gotten out.
Yeah. And then
it was, sorry, I had to say, it was so crazy when he told me, because that's what, like, my whole life I was like, yes, 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 anything that was asked of me. So my first like impulse was to say yes, and I just remember that feeling of like, whoa, actually the answer is going to be no this time. And it was just like earth shattering. But I was like, no. And he said, Jenny, are you sure? Think about it. You can say whatever you want. You can tell him whatever you want. I was like, no, I cannot support this. So I'm sorry, I completely interrupted you, but that was just so crazy for me. So
she spoke to someone who had gone through. She spoke to one of the victims.
Can I?
And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I want to say that even though I was out first, my husband was a big help for me getting out, honestly, because he would tell me, he's a very analytical person, right? So nothing that comes out of his mouth comes out, or almost nothing, it comes out like lightly. It goes through like a whole process before he actually says something. He thinks about things a lot. So sometimes he would tell me, Jenny, the apostle of God said this, but it doesn't make sense because of this. Or he would, and
I was still in the church.
And he was still in. And I'd be like, oh my Lord, like, let's just pray. They'd be like, oh, you're scaring me, let's just pray. And it was never like, I don't know how to explain it. It was always done. He was genuinely concerned. It was always done with concern. So that was happening. He was like starting to see some things that didn't make sense to him, and he would talk to his wife about everything. And I'm so sorry here publicly if sometimes like I didn't have the response that you needed from me in the moment, but in the moment I was just like, Lord, like, please help us. I don't know what's going on. What he tells me makes sense, but I also know you're apostle, and I know that blah, 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 right? So I was very confused, very scared, and I would just be like, Lord, please help us. So that was going on. At the same time, you guys, we are missionaries here in Helena, Montana. We got to speak to our supervisors. We got to speak to different ministers. And I just started to see so much corruption just through our talks. And it got to a point where you just can't deny that there is something wrong. And I was a queen of making excuses for everybody. I was a queen of saying like, oh, it's just this supervisor that is saying this, but the way that he understands the Bible is actually flawed. Or, oh, it's just this, or that happened because of this, or whatever. But there came a point where I just got tired of making up so many excuses, even though that's all I did, and I was really good at it. there came a point where I just wanted to know the truth. And I remember telling my husband that I was just tired. I just wanted to know what was really going on. So all of this is happening within me. It's not necessarily it's not necessarily something that we've both spoken about, especially because whenever he would talk to me about, his concerns, I would try to appease them,
So
more
just
than
a,
anything.
just a quick example of that, like whenever the apostle would go on his tours, right? It was always like he worked so hard, like the church should just always be trying to provide him with rest, que la iglesia sea su descanso, this and this and this, and su descanso. And like as a working person, right, as I'm sure many of you are, like how much descanso does one person need, right? And these are the things that she's referring to, that I would kind of talk to her and about, and I would be like, look, yes, I get it. The apostle's going on tour. He stands up to speak on Sunday, and then we don't see him again till the next Sunday. And then,
and I would be like, yeah, but you don't know what he's doing. He's speaking more.
and I remember very specifically during his visit to Washington, he gave us an example of like one of his days there, and he said like, "Oh, the brothers, the church, very gracefully, they got me a hotel room that like had a very beautiful view, right?" And he says, and so I was there, and I was just enjoying the view with the sisters who are always with me, And I was like, that's kind of weird, but okay. And then he goes, and then I went downstairs and I said goodbye to my wife and I said goodbye to my mom so that they could go see the city. And um, and then I just went back, like, and he was just like going through the example, and it was like, and so I was like, "Hey, Jenny, did you happen to catch this?" So he told us that he was in his hotel room with the sisters that are around him, and that he like that he had his wife and his mom like taken by church members to see the city. And you're like, well, what is he doing, like
Yeah.
he has one sermon to prepare per week, and then the rest of the time, like, it's all about his rest. These are the kind of things that I would talk to her,
Not just, this is a good example, but most of it was like preaching based.
yeah. And then I would say like, well, in this sermon he said this and he used this verse and he explained it this way, and then in this other sermon he used the same verse but out of context, and he explained, and like those explanations don't line up.
And I would be like, but that can happen, if I.
And so it was very concerning to her because he's the man of God and he's unquestionable when it comes to, what he says. And so those are the kind of things that would concern her. So when all of this started happening, like she didn't feel at liberty to always talk to me about what she was feeling,
what I was going
because
through.
she thought that it would just like
That it was my responsibility to and we can get in, like I could just go on, but that it was my responsibility to keep his faith alive. So anyway, we so all of this was happening within me, and then Misael wanted to read some of the stuff that had come out, out of the courts. He wanted to read some of the transcripts, and I had already been thinking about it, and nowhere in the Bible does it say that we should shield ourselves from the truth. So that to me just never made sense. It didn't sit right with me. So I was like, yes, go ahead. Let's go ahead and read it. And I was like, I'm sure he's not going to find anything there anyway. And when he read some of the details, I was broken. I was brokenhearted because we're not ignorant people. And the probability that that was a lie was very, very low. So there was a Jane Doe whom I knew of, but but I had not reached out to her because I had just found out that this was that she was a Jane Doe, so I hadn't reached out to her, and I did. And when I finally reached out to her, it makes me really sad that she said that I was the first one out of the whole family who had asked her how she was doing. And she was very sweet and gracious to tell me what had happened to her. And after I heard that, I just knew it was wrong. And I just knew I was out. So I actually went out to my car and I was talking to her in my car. When I came back inside, I came straight to talk to Misael, and I just told him, this is wrong and I'm out. And he was like, wait, Jenny, let's talk about this. hold on. And I was like, nope, there's nothing to talk about. I am out. So we talked about my conversation with her. We talked about my stance on it. He was so respectful. Thank you, baby. He was so respectful. And he told me that he needed some time to think about it. And of course I understood.
It was a lot to kind of just take in, because I remember when I was just sitting on the couch and she comes like storming out of the room and she goes, I'm out.
Like, this is wrong.
And I'm like, wait, let's talk about this. Of course, it wasn't funny at the time. We're laughing now, but it wasn't funny at the time. And it just, the reason I was like, slow down, was because I was trying to process, how am I going to get out of Ministerio de Ortodoxia? How am I going to get out of, being a missionary
And then something
at a location? And then it was a lot to try and process.
yeah,
and
all
then
at once.
but I mean, we did talk about it, and then she told me what she had talked about with that victim, and I mean, I knew that we could not stay, but it was just a difficult process to think through, how do I not stay? Because we all know what they say about you, right? And we all know how the church acts when somebody wants to leave. And not only was I going to leave, but I had to tell everybody that I was leaving.
Right.
And I mean, when I did, it was because they called me, and this was like so soon
It was
after.
like a week. It was like within the same week.
They called me and they said, the Apostle of God has
Seen your work.
has seen your work. This is 2020. He's in prison, right?
And he's wanted to promote you.
And he's wanted to give you the blessing of being the overseer, encargado, at Kansas, a church in Kansas. And so
oh my gosh, you guys, that was heartbreaking.
It was like what we had been waiting for.
That's what we had worked for our whole lives.
For so long. And so I was like, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
And I hung up.
It was like emotionless from this part.
And then I called, and then we sat on it that night, talked about it. I mean, we were already out.
So my husband was like, let's just think about all the possibilities. And he goes, something that we could do was maybe we can go and we can like change the church from within, like maybe there are some things that are wrong, but maybe we can help right those wrongs, because we've also fallen in love with the brothers. Every time we've been at any church, like Havasu, we were at Nampa, being here, we fall in love with helping people and helping the brothers. So he was like, think about it, maybe we can help. What about all those brothers? Are we just going to desert them? We know how the ministers treat them. So all of this was like rushing through our minds. And he said, well, what if we go? And I was like, okay, let's talk about it. What if we go? Well, if we go, I told him, I'm not going to go to any of the services. I'm not going to go to any of the prayers, because I knew that there are people who already knew me, and I knew that going, guys, if you are going, you are giving them the opportunity to mark you as like you're there. You are giving them some sort of power. You are giving them some sort of like apoyo or support, to their narrative. And I was not willing to do that anymore.
So after we talked about it, and
after we saw that, like, nothing. He was like, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, we knew it wasn't going to happen, but it came down to it being about, I was like, we decided to leave already. We're going to have to start over. Like we're beyond that point. And so I saw that call because I was called by the minister who sent me there, right? On behalf of the apostle. Of course, like there's people who taking care of this. But anyways, I was called by him. And then I called him back the following day because like the last thing that we talked about was this is the point where I decide if I sell my soul or not, right? Because if I take this position, then they're giving me money because I was going to start getting like paid by the church finally. And so they were going to give me money. So I was like, okay, so what is that money going to pay? It's my soul. I'm selling my soul. Like there's no way around it. Like I either decide to sell my soul now or I can keep my soul. And so that was decided. And so I call the following day, I call him back and I say, you know what? We actually are no longer going to be missionaries. And so that spiraled into, now I got to call my batallón supervisor. Now I got to call my encargado supervisor. Now I got to call.
And just let them know respectfully that we decline and that we're not going to be in the batallones anymore.
Yeah. So after all those calls, then I get a call from an old pastor that I had when I was still in Las Vegas as a member of the church. And it was just like this long guilt trip of, if you leave now, like you said you would be faithful, you gave your word, I gave my word in support of you. Like it was just like this huge call trying to guilt trip me into selling my soul. But I'm proud to say we did not. But
thank you, baby.
You know what? The reason I now say sell my soul, and if for whatever reason an LLDM member hears this, is because they knew that, like, once I said no, they knew I had said no, and they called to offer me this position again. I was leaving the church, but I was still being pulled in. And the proof of the selling the soul is that position went to a brother who was not even a missionary, that he had been wanting to be a missionary, and that actually he had been part of the batallones, but was no longer part of the batallones. So he had gone as a missionary, returned home, and then promoted to a minister. So, the missionary period is to see if you are going to be worthy of that position of a minister. So the fact that it was given to somebody who was not a missionary, who was no longer like in line for that position, just went to show me. It showed me very clearly that the church was not after a minister. The church was after a faithful, a loyalist, right? That the church just wanted somebody who they could put on payroll and not lose them. And so
someone who was going to be loyal to them.
We weren't willing to do that.
Not loyal to God. So then
sorry, just real quick. So DJ, to answer your question, it wasn't completely in sync, and I did see a few of your other messages, and I'm sorry we're not getting through all the messages. I do apologize for that, but I know that there's many people who have a partner who is not yet in sync with them. And to those people, we just want to say, please be a little bit more patient. Take it a little slow. I think that the relationship between a couple is one of the most valuable things that God gives us, whether you believe in God or not, that we have. And to me, that is, when Jesus says, love thy neighbor as you love yourself, like that's the first person that you get to practice that with. And so that relationship between you and your partner is so valuable that I think it's worth fighting for. It's worth being patient over. It's worth taking things slow over. especially if you have children. You want what's best for them, and um, just hang on, um, hold on to hope, and um,
We're not saying act as if you're already in. We're not saying don't have hard conversations, um, but we're saying just in whatever you do, act with love.
yes,
You know,
with
do
love.
it with love. But we are not in any means saying that you should still remain in, and keep your children in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's such a hard thing, and I'm sorry for anybody going through that. But I'm sure, again, I'm sure love will conquer, and you're not alone. Okay, look at everybody in the comments. We have you. I'm sure you have a community that you can always reach out to us, and I hope that like everybody in the comments is, you know that we can reach out to each other.
There's a quite a few comments about the double standards that the royal family, as Abby puts it, makeup was okay for them, music was okay for them,
Hair dye was okay with
dances were okay for them. Like, yeah, that double standard was something that we always. I mean, I'm a believe it or not, I'm a very introverted person. So like, I was never like a party. I was never attracted to
Believe it
parties
or not.
or invited to parties.
It's so hard to believe.
But yeah, I knew of so many people who had like just the smallest things, right? My wife, like when she got her wedding dress, she was not allowed to wear um, like a sleeve that didn't cover her entire arm, you know. So
And I had to wear gloves.
and then you
I
see
had to
like
be covered in entirety.
and then you see those double standards with like the wedding dress of royals, right? Like the not even, and it doesn't even have to be the apostle, just like pastors and their kids, like what they preach to the church is not what they practice within their own families. So yeah, that double standard is another example of bumping into some corruption.
And again, not saying that out of like judgment or out of like bitterness, but we're just saying the facts.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's why I said I was an introvert, because I'm not bitter about that.
and I'm an extrovert, and I'm not bitter about it either. But it is unfair, and it is something that it's true, and it's anyone can see it.
Oh look, I think this is a elbow cough. I like the Vic Cave. I thought it was a dabbing emoji. I had never seen that. That's pretty good. Yeah, both wore long skirts in antiquity. Exactly. Going back to we were talking earlier about the dress codes enforced by the church that are not biblical.
They're not. So while you're looking at the comments, so then guys, after
I'm sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I just laugh at myself because I really feel like I'm talking to friends right now, and I'm just like, I want to tell them the rest of the story. But so then what happens afterwards is that we start getting calls from people telling us that they heard rumors that we were apostates and that we were talking badly about the apostle online, and just all sorts of things. Like even the last live that we did, I don't know if some of you caught that, but somebody told us that she had heard another rumor that we hadn't heard before, but there was just like so many things said about us, and I know it was done to discredit us because they knew that a lot of people trusted us. Like when my husband would get up and he would preside over services, he read the Bible, so it sounded different, and it sounded more encouraging than when other ministers presided over services. And that was something that, like, you know, brothers and sisters told us a lot. So for us, it was just so convicting, and it was just like, yeah, like we're doing the right thing, and let's keep working on this, and let's keep reading the Bible. And you know, it was just such a good feeling to be able to feel like we were helping that way. But so there were brothers who trusted us, And because the supervisors and just all of these brothers knew that, they immediately started discrediting us and saying that we were speaking ill of the apostle and all of these other rumors that weren't true. We just wanted to keep to ourselves and to process and to move on. I know you're.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel so bad that we're not answering some of the.
Yeah, well, say them out loud. We can answer them.
Bianca writes, can you talk about how they try to compare Nason to Apostle Paul, but Paul was in prison for disturbing the public, spreading the word, and Nason is just a straight up predator. Yeah, I mean, they compared him to King David. Like they just take every little thing from all of the men of God and then just use very specific examples to prove their points. But all these comparisons are out of place.
And I'll say this, the examples that they use don't even apply to him. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said that just like Jesus, that he didn't speak a word. And I was like, well, he did just speak a word and I was guilty. So I would like to touch on that a little bit, if that's okay, and if you want to do it too. But let's just say what they say that he is being used as a sacrifice by God to show the world this and that, and that just like the apostles, he's suffering. But the apostles, first of all, they were not charged with what he was charged with. Second of all, they never admitted guilt. They said that they would trust God, and they actually did trust God. And then they were freed by God in most instances. So there's that. But then there's also the fact that when Nason's trial starts, he doesn't go in there. So let's just start with this. His attorneys can't say something that is not in favor of him, and they can't say something without his consent. They work for him, so it's not like they're going to say something that he wouldn't be okay with. So when they start actually arguing in favor of him, it's never he didn't commit this and he is innocent. It starts with it was consensual, and it builds on it was consensual. Nobody held a gun to their heads, yada yada. So there we see another distinction between his case and Jesus Christ and the apostles who suffered imprisonment. That he did defend himself. First, he said that he didn't need any help, and that God would provide, and that everything would be over soon. And then he hired the best lawyers that he could hire, and then his lawyers said that it was consensual. So while the church was being told that he was innocent and that his argument was his innocence, the reality was that in court, the argument was not that he was innocent and that he didn't commit these acts. No, because they weren't calling it crimes. That he didn't commit these acts, but that they were consensual. So, sure, of course, let's compare him to the men of God, but let's do it biblically and let's do it thinking critically, because we're going to see that really there's just no similarities there.
Abby asks, did he know he was being investigated? There's a lot of people who say yes, because he spoke very definitively about being in jail before he was arrested. So I think that people in his inner circle knew that something was going on, and usually these things go through the legal process. So at one point or another, it becomes public information. And so if anybody's paying attention to court documents and judge orders and things like that, then yes, they would see that he was already under investigation. So yes, Abby. And like Jenny is saying, that he like the story just changed so many times from what was being said in court by him and his lawyers and what the church was hearing, and as a consequence what we were hearing as members of the church. So it was just all very like Jasmine, I just saw the word strategies. Yeah, they kept saying in church that it was all just strategies, that he was just, that these were just strategies that they had to use because.
So then there's another contradiction right there, he said himself that he wasn't going to need any help, that God was going to speak for him. And then they start telling the church that there's all these strategies. So that's also what I meant when I said that I was so tired of making excuses.
Yeah.
I was so tired of having to excuse this or create this excuse to myself and keep having to like fight through all of these, thoughts myself. I was drained.
Comparing him to Jesus, a few people have mentioned, yeah, that's a terrible thing to do. Nobody can live up to Jesus, right? And sorry, nobody can live up to Jesus for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
One, it's difficult. Like we were just talking earlier, like who do you believe Jesus was, and
Yeah.
That concept. So yeah, it's just another way of controlling, because if Jesus said so, like how do you argue with that?
Yeah.
If he says to you what Jesus said, then there's no way for you to think for yourself. You have to take that word and
Right.
just do as he says, because Jesus said, so
That's very true.
that is just that is a strategy to take power away from the church, the freedom of the church to think for itself.
Right.
And I'm talking about the members,
The individual.
in this case.
Yes.
I think we're kind of already in.
Do you guys want us to stop?
Hour and a half.
I don't want to stop.
I wanted to mention just briefly that one of the things that I saw that I wanted to bring up was his expressionless resilience to the horrors that the Jane Does were describing. That to me was, as some people have already said, one of the most disturbing things about that whole situation, that as a human, far from the example that is Jesus Christ, who was love personified, the love of God personified was Jesus Christ. Even I was moved, and I had a pit in my stomach as I was listening to the testimony of the Jane Does, and I couldn't help but have the same expression that one lawyer, the one lawyer had, where he was just kind of like you could see it in his face that it was disturbing, to say the least. It was disturbing to hear those accounts of what they lived through. Even if you believe that you are innocent, how are you not moved by the suffering that these women are describing? Even if it's not even if you think you didn't cause that suffering, having no expression and having no sign of remorse or sympathy, that I think that's a better word, having no sign of sympathy in your expressions, I think is disturbing beyond the stoic heroism that the church wants to portray Nason's deadpan stare forward. If you are a man of God, and look, I hope that one day some LLDM members may find these things that we are expressing, because you should be worried that someone who proclaims themselves to be a man of God and to have the love of God and to be in a position of power, because Nason is in a position of power. Red 7 says nor empathy. Exactly. That just nothing, right? There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And so you should be concerned that your spiritual leader that has no reaction to listening to the suffering of others, right? Because that's just something human about us. You know what? Um, if I was in a position of power and was able to do more, I would I would like to, you know, like,
Extend some help.
yeah, help in any way I can. Like, even if this man didn't cause that suffering, which we all, the judge said he did, we all believe that he did. Why not take responsibility and say, Church of Jesus, who follows me and listens to me, um, receive these women as your sisters, because they were their sisters. These women were at one point your followers. So even if you believe with all your heart that you didn't do that harm to them, how can you not take responsibility of someone who has gone through trauma and just pity them and extend yourself to help them? That, like I said, to me was one of the that was a poor use of that word, because definitely the most disturbing thing were the testimonies of the Jane Does. But that aside,
that within itself was just,
it is troubling. It was very troubling to me that there was no sympathy or empathy or any show of contrition from hearing the suffering of others. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I think that any person who heard them is moved. But then add on to that, what would Jesus do? And I mean, does he or does he not have Jesus' spirit? What would Jesus do? Is that what Jesus did? Because Jesus was, I'm thinking that people are going to say, yep, that's exactly what he did, because the Bible said that he did not speak. No, but it did not say that he did not pity.
I know.
It did not say that he did not show emotion in his face.
He fed the hungry just because they were hungry. Like, he did what he could every time because he could, and because there's so many parts in scripture where it talks about Jesus being sad by the suffering of others, and though he never had to, he always did something for those who were suffering around him.
Yeah, he was so humble, and he always helped. He always acted with humility and with love. So if this is a man of God, then why doesn't he act like a man of God? He doesn't even act like a human being, from what we're seeing.
From that, it was, like I said, it was very troubling to me. And I also cried at times by hearing what they had gone through, because it was the Apostle Paul said it best when he said, things we don't even hear among the Gentiles at times, right?
Oh my gosh.
As Vic Cave wrote, his own niece. It was shocking and disturbing.
We took a day. Misael called out of work, and we just took a whole day to feel this and to process this. And one day is not enough. And that's why I was saying that it's so important that we take time to process this. I actually had nightmares last night too.
Yeah.
It's just, and can we just say how much we love the Jane Does and how brave they are, and how grateful we are to them. I'm very fortunate that I am in close contact with two of them, and I was actually able to reach out to them. But can we just say how much all of their testimonies have helped us, and how they are so very brave. They are so very brave, and just like that judge said, we heard them. We heard them yesterday. So,
Red 7, that was my point. I'm sorry. I get so caught up in my inability to express myself sometimes. But yeah, that's what I meant, that Nason should pay for their therapy. He should pay for their housing. He should pay for their kids to be okay.
He should ordain his church not to shame them, and not to shun them.
He should order the church to take them in and just give them whatever they need until they feel better. And that's what I was trying to say. Even if he actually thought that he didn't cause that pain, because he has the ability to do something about it, it is his responsibility to do something about it, you know. Um, and thank you for putting it into words better than I was able to. Yes, we are very grateful to the Jane Does, and um,
I've even thought, like, is there anything we can do? Is there any way we can help? And I asked one of them, and she said that the best way that we can help is being respectfully loud, because we don't want to like portray bitterness. We don't want to scare the people who are in there, you know, but we don't want LLD to keep winning with their narrative of where are they? Where are the ones who are out? Where are the Judases? Well, we're
Yeah.
not Judas. We actually love God. And to say that a man who would commit these atrocities, to say that God knew he was electing a man who would later commit these atrocities, that's the true heresy. So,
respectfully loud.
And that's what she said. Yeah, that the best way that we can help is being respectfully loud. You know, when you were talking about LDM and how long they are, it kind of reminded me of that little kid in like the playground. You know, he's the shortest, but he's the loudest, to kind of like defend himself, and that's kind of like, you know,
the Napoleon effect.
The Napoleon effect, and that's exactly what they do. In fact, I was still a member of the church when I was asked to post on Facebook something. Yeah, we were consistently told, post on Facebook that he's honorable, post on Facebook that you are, you know,
that you support him,
that you
and
support
believe
him
in his innocence.
But when we were asked to do that individually, because we were told to do that always, but sometimes we could get away with just posting it on, like, and I say get away with it because, guys, I was still in there, so I was never. Once I was out.
And we had like somebody to report to, right? As missionaries, you have your minister who is your overseer and who you are directly supposed to submit to, right? So we were individually contacted and told to post things in support of the church in Nason, and we like, oh yeah.
When I was told to, I just deleted my Facebook.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have a Facebook anymore, because I couldn't support him if I wasn't. I couldn't support him because I saw that the church was being lied to. I saw that there were like some in like, I don't know, just I could tell that we were being lied to, and though I wasn't aware of anything he had done or had any details, that didn't sit right with me, so I couldn't just fully support him on my Facebook. So
we appreciate everybody who showed up. I think we're gonna cut it at least. Sure. We're not gonna hit the Sunday school service length to not bring any flashbacks.
Oh, baby, thank you for doing this with me. I'm sorry. I know you're more introverted, and I could stay here all night.
I get nervous that like we're intruding on people's time.
Can we just read the comments one last time and make sure we didn't miss any?
I think we pretty much got caught up. We were told not to look at the news, Patricia. Yeah. Abby says, reminds me when they asked us to write letters talking about how much we know him and love him. Yeah, I remember that. And I mean, that's still the narrative that, you know who you've believed in.
Yeah.
That's such a, it's so twisted because you know what they've said about who you've believed in, but do we know who the church believes in?
Right.
I don't.
And they attribute, I think I touched on this last time, but they attribute everything that the church does to him. So while the church is working, they attribute that all to him, and they say, well, the only reason they work is because he taught us to work, which, I mean, like, that doesn't make sense, but that's exactly why they say we know who we believed in, because churches
Good.
are being built.
Good things get done.
Yeah, there are hospitals being created or whatever, but really is the church, it's the members working on that.
Yeah.
And it just all gets attributed to him.
David de la Luz asks me if I got the images that you sent me. Are they about the book with the 5 million? So a while back, a few days ago, not a while back, I posted a picture from the church website because I remembered that they had been saying 5 million since I was little. And then David de la Luz very resourcefully posted in YouTube the comment. He wrote that it's actually been 5 million since it was published in a book by the church called Labor y Vida del Apóstol, I believe, Vida y Trabajo del Apóstol. But anyways, he said that since 1997, when that book was published, the church has been saying that they have 5 million members worldwide, which, I mean, it's 25 years ago. So 25 years of 5 million members, which is both impressive and sad.
Well, for every bautizo, somebody got out. So.
Oh, that's right. People are leaving at the exact same rate that they're leaving at the same rate that kids are turning 14, because
most growth does happen that way.
Yeah,
right?
Most of them are the kids.
Yeah.
So David de la Luz, I don't think I've seen the images, how you sent them, but if you can resend them, I'd love to see them and share them.
And their hospitals are crazy expensive. Sorry, it's harder for me to read because it's closer to Misael.
Vic Fit Cave wrote, "My greatest anger is that apart from everything he did to these girls, he took God away from these innocent girls." Yes. That's
not from all of them.
Yeah. But, I think that as long as, if you believe in God, lead with your godly works. I think that's what we want to extend to them. The love that we feel we've found is the love we want to share. Bianca Gonzalez, Sunday school flashbacks of being in the 118-degree weather for 3 hours. Yeah.
Go Las Vegas.
Vegas gets hot. Sabdi Lucero, thank you. I'm so glad I found your videos. We're so glad that you guys are here.
Joined us. Thank you so much. I've been wanting a community for so long. Thank you guys so much. And I hope that I hope you guys reach out. I hope we can actually become a community and do this, consistently.
Oh, David, they're in the comments of the other video. I will go find them. And Marca 5 million. Yeah, if I said a different number, I'm sorry. 5 million. And then Red 7, I'm almost sure that they were claiming 5 mil in some of the hardback hymnarios with gold leaf and the little metal bells at the bottom of the string bookmark, if that makes sense. I remember those.
Oh my goodness, yes. That brought back a flashback. Guys, can I just say, I had good experiences in LLDM. I mean, I was born there and I was raised there, and it's okay to admit that. And I think it's important to admit that. It's part of us. It's part of our history. We might have had bad experiences there, but a lot of them were also good. And if we pretend like that never happened, I think that sends a red flag to people who are still in LLDM. But the reason I think that it's most important that we do admit that is because you can read it and reply out loud.
Oh, Adai writes, "Thank you, Misael and Jenny. Thank you for having these videos up for our community to come together and understand one another." Thank you. We love you guys.
We love you guys.
Yes, they taught us to have good morals. I do agree with that. Yeah.
Sure. And Misael was saying last time, I really wanted to say this, and I think I forgot. But yeah, for sure, there were some good teachings there, and there were some good things that Nason said, because they spoke out of the Bible, for some portions of it. And sometimes the Bible was taken out of context, but anything you say from the Bible it's like a self-help book. It's like the best self-help book that you can have, so there are going to be good teachings in there. let's attribute them to the Bible, where that where that credit should lie. So anyway, I wanted to say that it's important that we admit that to ourselves, that we did have good experiences there, because I think that if we don't do that, then first of all, we're not laying a healthy foundation, for our own healing and for our own to be able to move on.
Red 7 writes, the thing though is that those good memories were the moments with our church friends and activities. Nason and all the other stuff was meh. But the people, that was the truly best part of LDM, the community, right? I agree. I miss volleyball.
Yeah, a lot of it was awesome. And also, I really miss singing, and I'm feeling like God heard me there. I used to love getting up to the fives. I used to love it when we did like the last prayer. I don't know if you guys remember, we did like the last prayer, and then we did one more canto, and then we did one more prayer because Samuel was sick or something. And I always loved that, like that sometimes while the church sang, I would just be praying my heart out. And that was very, I love that. But I think it's important to remember that also, because that is gonna help us heal. That is gonna help us move on. And I actually had something written here, and I think I lost it.
The very last thing that I wanted to say was that I think that as we've recognized, yes, the choir, I miss the songs of the choir, and even like learning the complicated songs was like a beautiful journey to be on. But I think it's important to remember that God, as we said earlier in this video, God is everywhere, and we were able to commune with God and feel God's warmth. And in those moments of prayer, I now equate them more to like moments of complete peace and meditation. But all those things, if you believe in God, like all those things are still accessible to you there, because it's God despite the church. Even though we were in the wrong church, now we know we were in the wrong church, those feelings we had were very real. The things we felt were very real, and we can now, and they are still accessible to us without the church, because they were real, not the church, but those things were real.
And they came from God.
And so
the church made us believe that it came from the church itself.
Yeah, the church made us believe that it came from God through Nason because of the church, or because of Nason through the church. That's what the church preaches, right? But no, they came to God, from God, despite the church and despite
the horrible things happening to us, because God is a personal God. And I remember now what I was going to say. It's very important, because sometimes when we see posts from other people, or we receive messages from people we used to care about, saying that they're disappointed in us, or whatever you may have, it's there can come a feeling of guilt. And I think it's normal to feel guilty, because first of all, we know what they're thinking, and second of all, it's a very real, just kind of muscle memory wiring that we have in our brain now. So I think that it's important to remember the facts as they are and lay a healthy foundation. So when we do feel guilty because our friends are posting that they still believe in Nason, and we see those posts, we can know that, yeah, not everything in church was horrible. There were actually some parts that were enjoyable, but that doesn't mean that we're wrong. We are actually right. And once you kind of make those connections, it is easier for you to heal and move on, rather than just like deny a part of your life there, or of your experience there, in order to be able to convince yourself that you're right, bitterly, if that makes sense. So I do want to leave with this. We are right. Nason did do these things. The Jane Does were brave, and yeah, they're very brave. And as the judge said, shame on them. But that is not a responsibility or a burden that we have to carry.
Very well said.
No, I don't think so, but
I think
thank
so.
you, Barry. You're such a good supporter.
All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining. We really appreciate that. It's not just us.
Yeah. That's not
Don't
just
feel
us.
alone. You guys are not alone. And even in those moments where you feel the most like down and drained, you're not the only ones going through this. And if it's any comfort at all, I'm sure that there are so many members in the church going through this exact same thing, and they feel alone. So, it's a thing that we didn't do anything, but we're sadly paying for, the terrible things that have been committed by the church leadership. So
We didn't do anything wrong.
we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't change as people. All of it was them. But I mean, we're here for each other, and at this point, that's all that matters. We love you guys. God bless you guys.
Thank you, guys. God bless you.
Till next time.
We'll see you soon.